Welcome back. So, in our last session, we did some heavy lifting. We separated the dead weight of mere knowledge from the living, beating pulse of true understanding. Today, we are stepping right into the arena of human history. We're going to examine the profound, frankly startling difference between what we're simply told happened and what actually is. We are moving away from the illusion of crafted narratives and stepping firmly into the reality of genuine inquiry.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the trap of the narrative, dive into the neurological roots of this trap, look at how we can reconstruct true history, bypass binary thinking altogether, and finally, we'll wrap up with the overarching principle of polarity.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the trap of the narrative.
You know, as humans, we are literally hardwired to love a good story. We want heroes, we want villains, we crave neat beginnings and those nice, tidy endings. But here's the thing, this evolutionary trait, it's actually a massive vulnerability, because what happens when the controllers of our world capture this innate love for narrative? Well, they weaponize it into what we call imagined orders. These are the myths, things like nations, overarching laws, even the financial systems and money we use that exist purely in our collective imagination. Yet, these imaginary concepts shape our absolute deepest personal desires from the moment we're born. They essentially become invisible cages used to enforce mass conformity.
When this narrative capture happens, you have to realize that you aren't getting history anymore. You're getting a cage. You get his story. Think of his story like a rigid, massive concrete dam. It's completely linear, it's dogmatic, and it's highly moralistic, forcing this synthetic, artificial good versus evil binary onto the entire world. But as we know, like all rigid structures, it ultimately breaks catastrophically under the immense pressure of reality. True history, on the other hand, is like a fluid, adaptable river. It's open-ended, it's process-oriented, and most importantly, it observes things exactly as they are in natural law, without forcing an artificial moral story over top of it.
Moving right along to section 2, the emissary's monarchy and the neurological roots of this whole trap. So, you might be wondering, how exactly do we end up trapped behind that concrete dam in the first place? Well, the trap isn't just political or social, it is deeply, fundamentally neurological. Enter the emissary, the left hemisphere of your brain. Now, in a healthy, balanced system, the left hemisphere is just an administrator. It's meant to serve the broader wisdom of the whole brain. But drawing on the incredible work of Iain McGilchrist, we see that the emissary has actually usurped the throne. It has completely forgotten its role as a humble servant and instead acts as a tyrant.
And this usurpation completely changes how we process reality. The left hemisphere is obsessed with focused utilitarian control. It operates purely on binary logic, us versus them, winner versus loser, and it dissects our beautiful world into fragmented, interchangeable little parts. But the right hemisphere, the master, manages global attention. It perceives the holistic, living context of the world, relying on empathy, nuance, and this interconnected flow of actual reality.
The absolutely crucial point here is that his story relies almost entirely on the emissary's scholastic, bookish obsession with literal texts and strict control. It focuses purely on internal coherence. It just wants the signs to match up on paper, even if the entire system is a complete fiction. True history, guided by the master, demands actual correspondence with the external living world. When the emissary rules, we just get these regurgitated control systems that are totally divorced from the direct, grounded observation of nature's laws.
Which brings us to section 3, reconstructing true history by using the 0-1 framework. Okay, so if our biology and our societal narratives are constantly pushing us into these rigid structures, how on earth do we break out? To reconstruct the truth, we must learn to track exactly where our own personal timelines have been overwritten. And we do this by applying the 0-1 framework. The 0 represents the unknowing, this pure potential, the eternal order, where time simply doesn't exist. The 1 represents knowing, manifestation, and definable matter. It's taking the chaotic attraction of dualities and binding them into a stable form. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a tree forced to grow inside a square glass box. That tree only knows its shape by the artificial constraints pushing against its branches. Step 1 for us is simply observing those constraints, seeing the glass box. Step 2 is shattering that glass, breaking the artificial timeline of his story that society handed to you, and step 3 is building the vital bridge of understanding, mediating the flow between the 0 of pure potential and the 1 of your articulated reality. When that glass shatters, you transition from merely knowing your restricted place in a fake narrative to truly understanding your absolute freedom.
Next up is Section 4, bypassing the binary, or simply refusing to play the game.
Shattering that glass box means you have to refuse to play the game entirely. To truly hold on to our reconstructed history, we have to completely bypass the emissary's binary system of winners and losers. We must step into the role of the sovereign observer. The observer acts as a sort of non-volatile backup for generational memory. As the observer, you are no longer getting swept up in the emotional good versus evil drama of the imagined order. Instead, you are documenting things exactly as they are. You see the context of the other without any neurotic need to dominate them.
Now, what's really fascinating about this is how the observer creates a social checksum, because imagined orders are incredibly fragile and constantly being rewritten by whoever is in power. This checksum preserves the established truth against the arrogant hostility of those controllers. By holding on to an unbroken chain of empirical conditions, the observer actually prevents the fog of forgetfulness that is routinely weaponized to beguile the masses and continuously rewrite the past.
And finally, Section 5, the principle of polarity and securing the truth.
By stepping out of the binary narrative, we secure the truth. But to avoid swinging into either chaotic destruction or tyrannical control, we need synthesis. Mastering this dual nature of reality, the stillness of the zero and the motion of the one, requires the emissary to finally return its analytical findings back to the master's living context. This synthesis actually mirrors the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, or non-action. It isn't about exerting more and more forceful control. It's about surrendering to the spontaneous order of the universe and allowing true, grounded insight to guide our focus.
But mastering this duality reveals a much deeper cosmic engine at play. You see, these historical dualities, the tension between the emissary and the master, between the one and the zero, they're all merely varying degrees of the exact same cosmic force. So what happens when our massive leap in understanding triggers a harsh, systemic pushback from the world? Well, join us in our next explainer as we decode the principle of polarity and face the Einstein warning head-on. Until then, keep observing.